Well, welcome everybody to another session of Goldster Real Talk. And this is where we come together as a community to talk about the things in life that matter. Now, many of you may know me, but if you don't, my name's Lee Pycroft. I'm a human-given psychotherapist and presenter here on Goldster. And today I'm joined by a woman whose face I'm sure is familiar to many of you. And this is one of Goldster's longest standing presenters and yoga teachers, Virginia Walker. Now, Virginia is a highly trained yoga instructor. She believes yoga is for everybody and the practice can be adapted and modified to meet the needs of each person. Her classes aim to energize and balance by focusing on alignment in poses, and she's designed her practice to develop strength and flexibility, bring calm and clarity to her members so they finish each class with a restored and focused mind. Today, we are going to be chatting about the healing power of yoga, so please get involved in the chat because this is for you. Virginia, welcome back to Goldster Real Talk. Last time we spoke was July last year. Can you believe it?
Honestly, I can't believe that it was July. It's crazy. Hello.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Here she is. She is back by popular demand, I might add. And what really occurred to me last time we chatted, Virginia, was it was one of the rare times I was actually kept getting thrown off the call. It very rarely happens to me. And all people wanted was to chat to you. They just wanted to talk to you and get involved and to ask questions. And it was just such a lovely, lovely, warm session. So I thought what we could do today was I've got some questions for you. And I know you're doing some new courses on Goldster, and I thought we could talk a bit about that and what you've noticed and the sort of member outcomes and stuff. And then we can get you to unmic. We're actually streaming live at the moment on Facebook, but we'll finish that in a while. And anyone that wants to unmic a bit later can do, and you can ask Virginia directly all your questions. So yeah, but in the meantime, if you want to put any questions in the chat, please do. So wonderful, Virginia. Do you want to share maybe with people who are a bit newer to your classes a bit about your background and what got you into yoga?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started with Pilates first, and I wasn't particularly sporty as such at school, but there was someone who came to do Pilates, and I got quite involved with that. And I had a pretty serious back accident when I was about 4 or 5, and it really impacted not only my physical health but my mental health as well growing up, and a lot of sort of pain medication. They couldn't operate, but I had to find something which could help with the pain. And so I found Pilates first, and I absolutely love Pilates. And then when sort of more looking at the emotional health side of things, someone suggested to me, would I try yoga? And I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely no.
Why no?
Because at the time I had an image of in my head what I thought yoga was, and it was just not. It was very sort of a bit woo, a bit kind of.
How
I didn't really understand. I didn't kind of think, because for me, Pilates was about building strength and core, and I just felt yoga sort of was a bit wishy-washy. I don't know.
Isn't it interesting, isn't it, though? Because it's like Pilates is sort of, would you say it's sort of functional? It's not got the sort of meditative part to it that yoga does.
I think so, yeah. And it's quite I think functional is, good word for it. And so I did go, because I really respected this person who was saying, have a go. And I went to my first, it may not be my first ever yoga class, but I went to a yoga class. And literally, it was the combination of the teacher, the venue, and I was obviously ready to go move in that direction. And that's how I've kind of found with everything I've come across in life, whether it's different teachers, different practices, different forms and styles of yoga, because I have had a go at them all. I've just been slowly directed to them without sort of having to push or shove. I've just kind of gone to where I needed to be.
Yeah. When you sort of say directed, was that a sort of intuitive
Yeah.
sense? Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you would you kind of
show up? Some personal thing will just kind of
yeah.
present itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, there's that saying, isn't there, that when you're ready, the teacher shows.
Exactly. And
It's kind of,
what,
it's kind of that open-minded thing, and then something just comes into your sort of, eye line or your awareness. Does anyone else get that? Does anyone else relate to that in the audience? Let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear if that's your experience too. It's that sort of synergy thing, isn't it, that's so interesting, I think. Anyway, so go on. Love all of this. Carry on. So you kind of were intuitively following these forms of yoga, but you settled on Hatha.
So actually, I first started out with Kundalini, and Kundalini first, and got really for my own self practice, and then that moved to more into sort of Ashtanga, and then I was just kind of over quite a few years just experimenting with different, just really enjoying trying different teachers, different studios. At the time I was in London. Whenever I traveled, I was doing a lot of traveling with work at that point, because I wasn't working full time as a yoga teacher. And I remember sort of going to different countries with work, and in between meetings with different companies and clients and things, I'd find a yoga studio and just go and just experience different teachers, different practices, and just I was really open-minded at the time, really just like, and there were some classes where I was like, nah, didn't feel that teacher, I wasn't quite in line with the teacher, and yeah, so it's been a journey with it all. But I ended up training in Hatha, and that was just what you said before. When you're ready, the teacher appears, and I'd been looking for at the time a teacher training. Spent a long time researching, and nothing felt quite right. And then suddenly, I was doing a lot of breath work at the time with a particular guy. I just mentioned, I was like, I'm looking for training, you don't know of anything. So, it just so happens that so-and-so has just done this training. And I was put in touch with them, and it was just like, bam, I just knew that was the one. And I did that. And then sort of other trainings have followed on from there. But it has been Hatha that I've settled with, because I was ready to slow down. I love Ashtanga, but the combination of my sort of constitution of quite busy, fast head, sort of and being in a city, I needed to slow down, and likes like, and the more you see the more, and it can get a bit like so I needed a practice which slowed me right down.
But did you find though that because your mind was busy, and I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, because this has been my sort of block with yoga, because I'm the same. I get very, very busy and I'm rushing through things. And there's something I find quite exhilarating about that. And did you find that when you were slowing down, that actually to do that and to keep pushing through that, did you ever get kind of a bit bored or a bit like restless within that stages?
Angry. So angry.
Did you?
Oh my goodness.
Did you?
Like all these props. And I remember I was in a restorative class once. I was like, all these props. Oh my God. It's so messy. I don't like all these props. It's so messy. I just wanted to, flow.
Oh, that's so funny.
I needed to slow down.
So how did you? So how would you work through that? That's interesting. You sort of identify the emotion as sort of anger. Like, was it like irritation, like frustration? Yeah. And how did you kind of just work through that? What's the sort of? Is it the discipline of just showing up? And did you start to notice a shift in that?
Yeah.
How soon into the practice? Or how long had you been practicing yoga and experiencing this frustration before you started to feel that sense of it dissipating? There was a shift. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it took quite a while. And I did still do, the other practices as well, but I had started to incorporate this in. So it did take a while. And when I started to realize more and more that the head chatter is not real, That's where it, and to sink from, I talk about often like sink from the head into the heart or into the body. That's when it was like, okay, and actually starting to sort of feel more and more into the body rather than it being a physical practice. That's when it really shifted to me into the more sort of spiritual an emotional practice, and that's, I sort of dropped down. And just to say, like, there are some times where I can get, you know, things get faster, like now even, and I have to just be like, okay, we things, you know, like, let's just slow it back down, and I'll still feel that frustration again for a little bit, but it'll pass a lot quicker because I know. And that's why it's just constant practice. It's not, we don't we don't get somewhere and then it's all done and everything's wonderful. It's a continuous
I mean, isn't that true? Can anyone else relate to this? I mean, the older I get, the more I think this sort of myth I had that I'm going to get somewhere and have it all sorted, and it is just a myth. You know, that life is a practice, you know, and every life stage, every life phase brings different challenges. But the difference is I think that if I go into a bit of a valley of whatever the challenge is at the time, I have the tools to come out a little bit quicker, a little bit, unless it's a new experience, like, I don't know, loss of a the final parent or something. In February, my dad died, so that was my final parent who passed. So that was a new experience. I had to kind of think, wow, I have no parents anymore. That's kind of weird, right? You know, and adapt to that. But what I did realize is that all those sort of tools I've learned, you know, I was able to weather that adjustment more efficiently, more easily, more sort of with trust that I would be okay. So I think it's really interesting how you kind of built that toolkit by showing up on the mat, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, by repetition, and noticing that the narrative, the chatter was just chatter. It doesn't mean you have to get off the mat and that you're doing the wrong thing, you know, that this isn't for you. So interesting. Some lovely comments coming in, everyone. Gosh, I knew there'd be a lot of comments coming in with you. I'll stop asking the questions. We'll just answer everyone else's, I think. Okay. Let's see. Mandy saying, definitely, I found Reiki when I wanted to send absent healing to my mum while I was working overseas. How lovely. That's so lovely. And Pauline saying, I've been doing Pilates for a few years and then Goldster changed times and instructor. I switched mid Pilates into Virginia's class, which was halfway through and never looked back.
Oh, similar story. Wow.
Yeah, so enjoyed classes, Virginia. Overslept this morning, so missed you, from Trisha. Thank you so much, Trisha. Jan, for sure, I found yoga 2 years ago following the death of my husband. I'm 63 and this helped so much with my grief. Oh my gosh, that is so lovely.
Can I just say something on grief really quickly?
Yes, absolutely.
Yoga is such a powerful tool with grief. I know quite a lot I think grief's quite a misunderstood thing until you've been through it, and yoga really helps because, again, it's that constant thing, and grief doesn't go.
Grief's chaotic.
Build around the grief. So I'm really pleased that's helped.
That's so interesting, isn't it? In this sort of chaos of grief, I think.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's almost like the brain's trying to reconfigure all the things, and it's like that first wave where all the memories come up, you know, and it's just like you remember things you haven't remembered in years about the person or experiences. And while everything's being refiled, that sort of having something that has structure and an outcome you can predict can be hugely soothing, can't it? And also that sense of, because grief, I think, comes with a certain amount of fear, you know, certainly it's my experience of it, and sort of freezing, you know, that thing of moving, breathing, you know, is hugely powerful, I think. So Jan, to everyone, I have just joined Goldster and love Virginia's session this morning. There we go. Wonderful. And someone from Facebook, Laurel, I tried yoga in group class at the gym and didn't enjoy it. Every time I felt that something was too difficult, I stopped, and I had a lot of attention focused on me when I was quite happy to just wait for the next pose. I tried with Virginia because there wasn't much to do during lockdown. Then I started to like it because I could do my own to do things in my own time, and she explained it so well. And I can do child's pose when I want. Now love Kundalini as well as breath work. Isn't that lovely? So that's the sort of advantage of when you're doing it at home, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can.
You know what? I used to hate it when an instructor would come over, and there was one class I once went to when I was in my sort of experimental kind of going to any class phase.
Yeah.
I couldn't do any of it, and everyone was there like on their head, like doing their legs, like waving around me, and I was like,
so intimidating though.
And I was like, oh, stop coming over to me. The teacher just kept. I thought, yeah, so I understand. I will very occasionally, if I see someone doing something where I feel I can like just say, and I might have to use a name, I might just do it at the odd time. But yeah, I relate.
Yeah. Let me see. So someone was saying, loved your class this morning, Virginia. Do you have any good exercises for osteopenia?
Yeah.
So also following a CT scan, they've identified degenerative spine T11. Obviously, I don't want to do any postures that might aggravate it.
Yeah. So just on the osteopenia thing, that is onset osteoporosis. So I had osteopenia, and I've managed through yoga to get my bone density into a sort of normal.
Have you?
Yeah.
Wow, so that's incredible.
Yeah, and it is just about it's using our own body weight along with walking. I really good, and really for me, yoga and walking have been the things that have got me back into the correct range, and sort of eating, a full healthy range, varied diet.
Yes.
But yeah, the all of the weight bearing, even just being on all fours on hands, you're doing a lot there. It might feel so simple, but that weight bearing.
Interesting. Yeah.
So just to say general yoga, and with the T11, I won't comment too much on that because I don't know the specifics, but just listening to the body, and if you're there with the breath, listening in, your body will tell you what it doesn't want to do.
Yes. Yeah. So that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I did a live with some wonderful Goldster members, and one of them had pelvic pain for many years, and she's such a wonderful woman, and she'd had all sorts of medical interventions, and she started doing your yoga classes and kept showing up because it was an issue of chronic pain. And a year later, she's practically pain-free, which I think is an incredible testament to her for showing up regularly and to keep showing up. And that, in situations like that, it's sort of almost stepping away from that kind of medical model, isn't it? Of you go to doctor and they'll fix everything. Of course, it's brilliant for certain things, but then we have to have agency in our own life to do stuff at home. It's health is at home kind of thing. But I thought that was incredible, and it brought me to sort of think, well, yoga's obviously got something in it about pain relief, and you've mentioned at the beginning of this conversation about the pain you had in your back from a childhood incident. So can you share a bit about how it helps pain relief? And because I think there's a fear in that. I have ankylosing spondylitis, which means I get inflammation in my back, and sometimes the stiffness of that can make me sort of not want to work through it. But I know that if I can work through the levels of pain, that suddenly it frees up, Have you got sort of any thoughts on people who maybe have chronic pain and how yoga can potentially help?
Yeah. So in terms of the breath, yoga is, massive part is linking the breath with movement, or doing our breathwork practices, and that just using the breath to create space in that body. So you're saying, like, when we have pain, we automatically we build these layers of armor. So the breath itself is the sort of the inside coming out. We can create the space and breathe into those certain areas, and doing different breathwork practices. So for example, when we lengthen out the exhale, we're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So by doing that link then with with different poses, such as, you know, if you can forward fold, even if it's majorly propped up, child's pose or any sort of forward fold, you're using the qualities of the pose, the energetic qualities of the poses to bring in the health, and call it sukha and dukkha. So sukha is
really,
and dukkha is dis-ease. So we want to be accumulating sukha in the body, ease and flow.
Lovely.
And it just get things flowing, and that the movement with the breath.
Yes.
Alignment and things.
It's that, you know, I often sort of think of the parasympathetic as the sort of calming response, a relaxation response, isn't it? You know, the more we can learn to mobilize that on a regular basis, the easier it is to mobilize it when we really need it, whether in pain or emotional, physical, you know, whatever. The questions are pouring in. So just on, oh, listen to this. This is really lovely. Thank you for sharing this, Jane. Someone's just saying, Jan, I've done yoga for years, but have found Virginia's classes really have helped with coping with grief after the passing of my husband suddenly before he retired. I'm in my 60s too. I'm really enjoying doing these classes in my own home too. Everything is readily at hand, and you can create your own atmosphere with candles, etc. Isn't that absolutely lovely? So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry to hear about your husband. It's we're all going to go through grief, aren't we? I remember who is it? The singer Nick Cave. He always sort of says love and loss are forever intertwined. So my mum used to do yoga and thought it was a bit of a fad. How wrong. When I was a young girl, Virginia's class had made me more supple. I can now sit cross-legged. Wow. I used to do ballet as a young child, and I think this has really helped with balance. So I think you said once, I think in the magazine, which is the Goldster magazine, you were interviewed, and I remember you saying in there that some people find it quite difficult to sit cross-legged.
It's impossible for some people, and that can be, I've never said anatomically, you know, it can be because literally whatever you do and however much yoga you're going to do, it may just not be possible because of your bone structure and your makeup. But it's a lot of people are able to do it, but just the hips and lower back just so tight. It can take quite a while to melt. To
open up that area. Absolutely. Jane saying, I've been doing hatha yoga class for 6 years. When I tried doing my own practice, I found myself finishing my practice in record time. I'm slowly managing to slow my practice and thoughts down. Love your classes, Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
Fabulous. And Jan just responding to Jane, thanks. It's not easy, is it? But we have to find ways to help with this new and unwanted journey we are now on. Yoga has been so very helpful. So it sounds like Jane and Jan, it's a real sort of mind-body point here, isn't it? You know, when we're going through grief or we're going through sort of physical limitations we may be experiencing as we travel through time. Pauline asking, what's the difference between the different types of yoga? So you've said hatha is slower, Ashtanga is faster?
I think so. Ashtanga is a sequence. You have different series, and you move each class. You tend to move through the series, so set poses each class, so that's Ashtanga, and you usually hold the poses for 5 breaths and then move on, and you do a lot of chaturanga, so going up and down, and so it's a very sequenced, quite repetitive at times. And hatha is definitely slower for sure, but it doesn't mean it can be very strong still. So almost the way I feel is that the slower we can go, we can actually do a more strengthening practice because we're holding for longer.
Oh, interesting.
So fast doesn't always mean, you know, better. Stronger. But there's so many different types of yoga that have popped up over the last century, but they all derive really from hatha. And so there's been all these different offsprings and different teachers who pop up and create their own their lineage, and and they all have their place. They all might focus on something slightly different. Kundalini, very spiritual practice, working with the snake kunda in the base, looking to kind of waken up the spirit inside. And
oh, interesting.
I got that very wrong, but that's my
it sounded good though.
A lot of really strong practice. You've got your breath work, your breath of fire, and but there's so many.
Yeah. Does that help, Pauline? Do let us know.
If you have any more specific questions on.
Yeah, Jill just saying, I've done yoga now for 7 years, initially by a yoga therapist, which you would hold poses for 2 to 3 minutes, found Goldster early on and love doing the different forms and instructors. Love doing different forms and instructors. We are so lucky to have such great teachers. Yoga helps keep my body and mind younger. I'm 65 and don't feel it. I mix it with walking first thing for 2 miles, do spin classes and fit steps at the gym.
Wow.
But do love our live class and recorded. Thank you, Jill. That's lovely, lovely, lovely to read. Let me see. Oh, and yeah, someone's just saying here, actually, from Jane, when you were referring earlier about sometimes calling, out in your classes on Goldster, if someone needs a bit of adjustment, that she loves it if you do that. So good to know, isn't it? Also, Jill saying, I'm amazed how much stronger in my arms and legs I am after doing yoga. I've got spondylitis in my neck. Jill, I feel you. So have I. And doing yoga has helped me lots. Well, that might convert me to go back and try and slow my busy mind down. And what else? And Angie just saying she has osteopenia. How do you say it?
Osteopenia.
Osteopenia too. And Goldster's helped me to reverse the decline. Grateful.
Oh, great.
That's from Angie. Wonderful. And love how Virginia steadily progresses us and combines with physical and more spiritual candlelit yoga. Was so nourishing during the barren months of lockdown. Absolutely lovely. Thank you so much. It's so interesting. So in terms of, you have been teaching pelvic floor courses, haven't you, of course, and also 8 limbs yoga. Can we touch a little bit on the pelvic floor? Because I think it's a conversation. I know we've spoken about this before on Goldster. Last year we had a pelvic floor challenge. And I think it's something that is moving more into the line of awareness. Is essential to have a strong pelvic floor, not only for, incontinence, but also sex, right? Yeah. I mean, it all makes a difference and it's all part of life. Can you share a bit about that course? And so you've run it a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah, we're on the 2nd round now. And
yeah.
It's so important. Like I've just a bit of background on this quickly. I work, as many of you know, with pre and postnatal women, and I'm a birth and postnatal doula as well. So this area it's I've just seen so many things that can go wrong, or how quality of life is impacted when the pelvic floor, say after childbirth, or if there's been injury or prolapse, anything that's happened, and men and women, it's not just women here, but also I think a major thing for me is with this area is about quality of life and confidence. And I know there are people who are too scared to go out for lunch because they're worried about leaking or whatever, and the isolation and the fear, and then social phobia comes in, mood disorders, like it can really have a domino impact on people's mental health. And quality of life, like sex is really important. If that's something still, that's in your life, it's not, whatever, but it's really important. And I think it's key to be able to have these conversations around this area, because people just don't talk about it otherwise. And I just try and sort of normalize it, and there is no shame if you need to get to a physio, a pelvic floor. There are specialist physios for this, and I'm teaching very generally here,
Mm.
but everyone thinks that we can have our pelvic floor is, you know, too weak, but sometimes it can be too strong. So we have
Really?
oh yeah. So this can then cause similar symptoms from it being too strong. So we, you
Never
know,
knew that.
yeah, and that can be causing incontinence too, because we want it like a muscle. We want it to be able to contract and relax. And if it's too strong, it's just going to be rigid and not able to do its job as well.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, so touch on that.
So has anyone in the audience, have you been part of that course? I'd love to know how you got on and what the outcomes you are. Did you so in that it's 6 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in that 6 weeks, you just take pictures. Can you share a bit about what people will go through? What kind of the sort of outline of the 6 weeks is?
Yeah, sure. So we do look at a bit of an anatomy, if I can speak, and so we kind of, I think it's really important to be able to visualize, even if it's not perfect visualization, but feel and know what these muscles are, where they are, what they really look like, and to be able to connect with them more and more. The power of visualization is huge when working with, you know, the body, mind, spirit connection. So the more we can visualize, I think is really important. And yeah, we look at breath work. There are certain breathing practices, and we do the pelvic floor exercises themselves. And then just looking at, you know, we don't need to be doing the pelvic floor, the sort of squeeze and lift like all the time. We can be incorporating different yoga poses to strengthen and
interesting.
relax. We need to make sure we know how to relax as well.
Interesting, because you always sort of think of the sort of, you know, when you're standing there and you just keep squeezing and releasing. Do you know what I mean? And that's what you do. Someone's just saying here, Mandy saying yes, loved it and learned I was doing the NHS squeeze exercises wrong by doing it on the loo.
Yes, I was really grateful for bringing that in. Yeah, we don't want to be practicing them on the loo. It's, yeah, we don't, because it can cause infections and things.
Okay, yeah.
Unlikely, but it's just better not to.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So you can do it by the squeezing and then different yoga poses, which will help just strengthen it. And it's something that you do daily then, indefinitely, really.
Yeah, and just to say, the yoga style that I teach for Goldster is, we're focusing on, I mean, I don't talk about it every class, but they're very much, you know, we do a lot of chair pose, we do our warriors, and a lot of these poses, I often put a happy baby in, they're working the pelvic floor. So we're kind of doing it anyway every day, but the course is just honing in on it.
Yeah. Also, it's having that awareness, isn't it, about the anatomy and those parts. Yeah, absolutely. Just someone also saying here, I think it's excellent to have this. I've always done pelvic floor exercises, but I know so many people who aren't aware. I do the classes when I can, absolutely, and they're recorded anyway, aren't they? And Jane just saying, yes, I joined this, but need to work on the breathing and squeezing. Okay, and so the other one is 8 limbs.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about the enlightenment. What's the sort of the sort of term that goes around that?
So the 8 limbs, we're just looking at the more philosophical side of yoga and
liberation, enlightenment, isn't it? Yeah.
And how. So there was one of the ancient texts written by Patanjali, Yoga Sutras. It's talking about there is a path that we can follow to lead us to spiritual enlightenment. And we can really, what I've tried to do in this course is sort of not westernize it, but make it feel approachable and something that you can bring into your everyday life, because I think that's really important to you know, make things accessible. And it is, again, I think it's important, if people are interested, to know where the roots of yoga come from, how we get to being on this mat doing these poses. And there's a lot behind it. And there's the, you know, asana, the movement, the practice is one tiny part of this path. And just look at the sort of ethical, moral codes and ways of living.
Interesting. Hence the sort of the ways of living, hence the sort of more enlightened approach as you develop that practice. Has anyone here done the 8 limbs? And what were your insights? So Amber just saying 8 limbs yoga, so gentle and calming, loved it. 8 limbs is amazing, great finish to a week. It gave me an insight to yoga and lessons to bring into daily life. Also saved me a trip to ashram. Love that. Also, Sheila just saying here, I walk every morning after breakfast, and for some of the walk I practice the pelvic floor exercise along with the breathing. I'm not far off my 80th birthday.
Oh, well, great. Yes.
Isn't that lovely? So many lovely comments. Absolutely. Will you be teaching the 8 limbs again, or will you just keep doing that one after this one's finished?
What I'm going to do after this next one's finished, I think we've got about 3 weeks left on this one. We're on the 8 limbs at the moment. I'm going to alternate between chakra yoga, bring that in again, yay, and then 8 limbs. So I'm going to switch them both, because I think the chakra side, I think is really important to keep talking about as well.
So share a little bit about the chakra part.
So the chakras are the energetic, subtle body, and we have 7 main wheels going down the center. And we, through our practice, breath work, movement, visualization, sound, etc., we are balancing areas of the body, and we're all different, we're all unique, and we'll have blockages. Sometimes chakra means spinning wheels, so these spinning wheels of energy, and we're learning to balance. And when we have more knowledge about the chakras, in our everyday life, it can be, for example, if you're finding that you're finding it hard to speak up, communicate, say what you want to say, there might be a blockage in the throat. So we can start to do, when we're working on Vishuddha, the throat chakra, we're learning to sort of open, so you're able to speak more freely. And
oh, interesting. Will the visualization be part of that? Sort of, will you discuss sort of speaking up and imagine yourself speaking up, or you're releasing
affirmations?
Affirmations.
Like,
yeah. So it's that kind of that sense of, I always think with the right words, there's a power in them. There's a resonance in them, and it's just finding those right words with affirmations with people. I think I've got a sort of bit of a theory around them that, if someone is very low and their affirmations are too big, it can feel like a bit of a reach. It can feel like they're too far away from that affirmation. But sometimes when they're sort of more moderate, dependent on where the person is starting off, they can be more believable, so easier to absorb and digest. Do you know what I mean? And they're more within reach. So I think, whenever I've had clients that say affirmations don't work, I always sort of think, well, it's maybe the leap is too big. Like if I feel really awful at the moment, I'm just saying I'm the most fabulous person ever and I can do anything I want. Maybe I just think that's too big of a leap. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just for today, I'm doing the best I can, would be more sort of within the boundary of what I could sort of think, okay, I can absorb that and make that work for me. Really wonderful. And someone just saying, love the chakra yoga we did on Wednesdays, glad it's coming back. And Laurel just saying, I love the chakra yoga as well. So I'd be really interested to know, what were your learnings from chakra yoga, Jane, Jill, and Laurel? Really interesting to know from your perspective what you learned from that and how it ripples out into other areas of life, because it's the whole conversation about the mind and body, isn't it? And the two being so connected. And when we sort of have an enlightenment or an insight, how that ripples out into other parts of life, So I was just thinking, maybe what we could do is maybe finish on Facebook. And then those of you that are on Goldster with us, maybe we could invite you to unmic, and Virginia can hear your voice and you can chat to each other, and we can have a bit of a community get together. What do we think? Let us know in the comments if that sounds like a plan to you. What do you think, Virginia?
Yeah, that sounds great.
I know when we do sessions where people can unmic on Goldster, the overall sense is people love it, because not only can they chat to people they've maybe seen their name in your class, but they get to chat to you and hear each other's voice. And there's something very connecting about that, I think. Yes, go for it. Wonderful. Okay, so Ben, who is in the background, maybe if you could just let us know we've finished on Facebook. This is just to allow the Goldster members a bit of